Let's just go. We are live now here on YouTube. We're, I think we're live on Blog Talk as well. This is the Rope A Dope Radio podcast on a Wednesday live per usual. Sounds good to say that because sometimes on Wednesdays I haven't been able to do the normal time. But of course, I may not even be on right as we speak. I really don't know. Maybe I'll check the Twitter here. But anyway, we are going to start the show with recap from I guess you could say, an interesting weekend on a couple of levels. Anthony Joshua versus Joseph Parker turned out to be pretty mild, to say the least. Now, I don't think it was just a horrendous fight like I've seen a bunch of people say online and on podcasts and whatnot, but on the flip side, I don't think it was just this wonderful display of skills. Eddie Hearn said, it was a master craft. Yeah, I don't say that, but like I said, I don't think it was as good as or as bad as people said as well. So we're going to talk about that fight. We're going to talk about real quick that main event from the Golden Boy card on ESPN2 as well. And for those joining, if you could tweet me at Rope A Dope Radio to tell me if you can hear the show or not. Sometimes people come and go throughout the show. I haven't seen anyone leave yet, so I don't know if they're kind of waiting for me to start the show and they don't know it's going or what. So anyway, that would definitely be helpful if you could do that. Anyway, we'll talk about Joshua Parker. We'll obviously talk about Wilder and Joshua, right? And just the fallout so far. We do have an update on a couple of different sources. One coming right from the desktop of Dan Raphael today. Also some BoxingScene.com update as well. It's kind of funny because Eddie Hearn's been all over the place. We're going to go back to negotiating. We feel good about it, to saying that they haven't even been talking at all and the team doesn't want it. And so they're kind of all over the place. Definitely. I mean, this is, it's all over the place. I really can't quite grasp exactly. Well, I can actually. He's being a promoter, right? That's kind of what you do as a promoter. So we're going to talk about, would it be next? Would they both take a fight in between sometime in the summer and then do it in December? Obviously, the goal is to get it done this year. And there is some positive news coming from the Hearn side. Not just, Wilder side is basically made it pretty open and obvious what they want. But we're going to get into that, no doubt about it. We'll also talk, since the last time we spoke, Canelo just yesterday withdrew from the fight with Gennady Golovkin on HBO pay-per-view. We'll cover the fallout. We'll talk about what their point was. They had a doctor. They had Canelo's doctor. They had Oscar was there, of course, Eric Gomez. The Golden Boy team kind of got to tell their side of the story, and I thought it was a good idea to just pull out. I mean, April 18th is so far away. You're holding the fans hostage at that point. And so we'll talk about the fallout. We'll talk about what they had to say. We're not going to get too detailed in how that April 18th hearing will go, or whatever, what kind of suspension he'll get or whatever the case is. But if you look at some of the if you look at the backup plan for Golovkin, I both understand it, and if it's true that it would still remain a pay-per-view, I'd be very irritated. So at some point I realized, we're about a month away from the fight. So you're not going to have a great opponent per se. But one, you could do better. obviously. And two, well, there's more to it. So we'll talk about all that stuff, no doubt about it. There is a couple other news items as well. We'll cover Deontay Wilder's. Wilder was going to have a press conference today, just to kind of update. I think it was going to be a teleconference, just to kind of update the people on where they're at. Their side of the story, or not even that, but just here's what we want type of deal. But obviously, he had to cancel that yesterday because of Canelo. Canelo had his presser, so that wouldn't make sense. But we are going to address an investigation. I'm sure it's a real thorough investigation from the WBC about Wilder's comments on a radio show about catching a body. So we'll cover that. We'll cover some fight news in general, whether it's fights that are made. Pacquiao has a fight made, supposedly. It sounds like it's a done deal. And then, of course, we got to look towards this weekend. This weekend, man, I'm really excited for it. With all this news and heavyweight Wilder, Joshua stuff, and, of course, Canelo stuff, right? I'll tell you what, this fight is definitely sleeping. It is. It is sleeping. People are not talking about this. And by the way, I think I see CT on there. CT, could you check me to see if you can actually hear the show? I'm having a little bit of issues. I had some issues earlier in the show as far as connecting. And, okay, you can hear it. Good. I'm glad. This has been a little weird for me right now, but it looks like it's good to go. So I'm really glad to hear that, because here I thought I'd have to do a good chunk of the show, and then all of a sudden, I got to do it over again because nothing picked up. And we are live streaming on not on Blog Talk, but on YouTube as well. So we'll keep that going for a chunk of the show. If you're on the move and you can't listen to it on YouTube, 646-381-4990 is the number to call. There's also a link right there in the episode, or right there in the description box to the episode. And this is, if you're listening to it live tonight, or if you're listening to it on YouTube a couple days from now, let's say Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and you want to listen to the full, all the way archived episode, it's right there in the description box as well. Appreciate, those who do choose to listen to the show on YouTube. It just works out for them. So, yeah, we're going to take a look at this Showtime triple header. That's really under the radar, to say the least, right? Arislandi Lara versus Jarrett Hurd is a really fun style matchup. Clearly, Lara has the advantages in a lot of ways, but the last two fights, you could say the same thing, especially the last fight with Austin Trout for Jarrett Hurd. Hurd's not really worried about winning early rounds. He's more middle and late, wear you down, knock you out. So I'm looking forward to that. One of my favorite style matchups is, because we get more of an abundance of them anyway nowadays, is the boxer versus puncher, the come forward fighter, versus the outside guy. We also have DeGale and Truax, the rematch. Of course, Caleb Truax from where? Minneapolis. That's right. He took care of business, just really destroying DeGale to the point where it looked like the fight was going to be done. It looked like he was actually going to, knock him out. He had him on the ropes. He was just all over him that whole fight. So we're going to see, how that rematch goes. I think it's intriguing. DeGale has, for a while now, been past his prime. Just how far past it is. He talks about, well, that was a wake-up call. It's like, well, wasn't Porky a wake-up call in 2016? So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Julian's J-Rock Williams versus, what's his name? Oh, man, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. It's like, it's a guy, he just scored a really nice win, too. Why am I forgetting his damn name? Is it Gallimore? I think that's what it is. Yeah, Nathaniel Gallimore. He's a guy that took a guy out in style. Thanks, CT, for texting me that as well with the Gallimore. So that's an interesting fight too. Julian Williams trying to build back after that spirited effort, but clearly got, beat fairly handedly by Jamal Charlo, a guy who now is at middleweight. So it's a big fight. It's a big fight. And of course, Gilmore coming off a very good win. Deloach was on the move, on the up and up. He was knocking people out. He kind of was getting a little buzz on the hardcore, ground level of boxing. And by the way, I just saw another text as well. I appreciate that, CT. So that's a great triple header. Showtime, man, they've been bringing these triple headers for years and years and years. Luckily HBO's starting to catch up, or I shouldn't say catch up, but starting to finally get the hint that a triple header is pretty cool. So that's a really good triple header. We'll take a look at some other, fights on the schedule. So we'll definitely go recap Wilder stuff. We'll get into a little bit of the Canelo news. And then we'll get, of course, to Showtime, the triple header. Then we'll go back to news and notes and rumors and whatnot, stuff like that. So we'll start with Anthony Joshua versus Joseph Parker. And, I'm a big fan of the outdoor events and in the stadium, and it just looks cool on TV. It's great. It's great for boxing, yada, 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 right? It's all fine and dandy, right? It really is. It's awesome to see that taking place. What is it? The last 3 fights, almost 250,000 tickets sold. Something like 246 or something like that. 246,000 sold in the last 3 events. It's phenomenal. But long story short, can we get in the ring at some point a little bit earlier? Can we get in the ring a little earlier? Is that too much to ask from me? Is that too much to ask? I probably need Joshua in the ring a tad earlier than it takes him in this one. And some of the stuff is cool, while other stuff is like, well, that's really not that cool now. So just get in the freaking ring after a while. Light up the AJ stuff, do some fireworks, and get in the ring already. Like, golly. But anyway, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I do get it. One of the biggest stories of the weekend, well, beyond Deontay Wilder, Wilder didn't show up because he felt he was just going to get, Dillian White sicked on him, and they weren't really going to talk the fight, with him and Wilder, and they weren't going to allow him in the ring. And then, of course, Eddie Hearn talked about, well, actually, Joshua, even though they got like extra security to make sure it didn't happen, but later Eddie Hearn said, well, actually, Joshua would let him in the ring. He totally let him in the ring. It was going to be on his terms. It's like, oh, okay. And we know because, they say they don't have a signed contract, so he's not with all the hype, even though that's exactly what a lot of this stuff is. And that's what boxing is. And that's what Eddie Hearn is. So he's been saying, he's been doing his job as a promoter. Let's not lose sight of that. And he's got to, make his side look better, even in some terms it's not. Yada, yada, yada. Eddie Hearn's been pretty good at saying things after the fact or during when it comes to negotiations, or just, I can't say be honest all the time, but he usually is pretty upfront, and you could kind of see him going a couple of different routes at the press and stuff like that. And it's funny because he's like, here, we scheduled a press conference on the undercard press conference. We were going to have Wilder have his own press conference. Well, maybe if you told him that earlier, that could have been something he'd go, well, all right, that'll be my time to really let everybody have it, or Wilder or Joshua have it, whatever. But anyway, beyond that talk, right, the biggest talk was Anthony Joshua's weight. What was he up to, like 254, and his last fight was way too heavy. lot of people talked about how, man, he's a big dude and he's never going to be able to lose any kind of weight. He's just a big dude. It's not, when people talk about how muscles can, steal your oxygen mid and later in the fights, and especially how hard he likes to try to hit and throw stuff, he seems like he has a gas issue, right? He does gas, not gash, pause, gas. He came in 12 pounds lighter. It's his lightest weigh-in since 2014, 242. So that was something, and it tells you that he's been listening to a chunk of the people that said there's really no point in getting that big. And I understand Klitschko is a big freaking guy, so he wanted to put a little extra weight for that, but I think it backfired. Anyway, as far as the fight goes, first couple of rounds, I'd say the first 4 rounds, 3 of them I gave to Joshua. He was landing a right hand to the body. There was a little technical issue in the second round. I don't know if it happened to you guys when you're watching or whatever, but to me, it took away like the first 40 seconds of the second round. So it was a close round. Couldn't really tell exactly who won it because I missed the first part. I did, there was a few shots to the body and a jab again from Joshua, but I couldn't quite grasp it all the way. Now, Parker had movement and mostly a jab. You could see him start to land some right hands early and mid in the third round. I actually gave Parker that round. I thought he won that round. He also landed a nice late left hook. But he was moving pretty decently, I thought. Some decent action from both of them. Both of them really were landing pretty well to the body. There was a body shot kind of later in, what was that, the 4th round that seemed to bother Parker somewhat. But I like I said, so it's 3-1. Mostly a jab and a left hook from Joshua for most of this fight, really. I mean, the right hand didn't come into play all that often. He was trying to land the uppercut as well, was Anthony Joshua. And he did a couple of times in close. He did a couple of times other than that, but he missed a lot. Parker had that little reaction that he'd always put his right glove and kind of turn his head and kind of block the gist of it anyway. Probably 25 seconds into the 5th round, something like that. Right there. I put it 25 to 30 seconds. Another nice left hook. But other than that, it was a slow round. And there'd be moments where you saw like a little bit of a chess match, right? A chess match. There'd be moments where you had a little back and forth. And let's be honest, there were some moments where it was real slow. Like I said at the top of the show, I'm not going to call this some technical quality fight. I'm not going to say that, but I'm also not going to call it the most horrendous thing in just, a horrible fight. I thought it was in between. There were a lot of slow spots, though. No doubt about that. I did think Parker was moving well. I also gave him the 6th round. So I had it 4-2 after 6. Joshua started picking up the pace a little bit, especially late in that 6th round. It was kind of weird, though. Like, Parker hit him with a pretty good shot, a couple of shots, right hands. I thought he landed the better shots overall. And Joshua, backed up. And next thing you know, the ref, started warning both of them. He broke up a part of the fight that didn't need to be broken up just yet. And obviously the ref, basically from that point on, just kept delaying some of this action. And it was just kind of like, well, wait a second, and even with the tape. Now, of course, that's not a new thing, right? The tape comes loose. Generally, if you're not in like a back and forth or you got a guy on the rope and you're starting to take advantage of him or whatever, usually they stop the fight, let him tape it up. But there was a moment where Joshua actually basically kind of called his own timeout to go get taped up. It was really random. And sometimes, sometimes refs kind of depend on their voice from the outside too much, and they need to go ahead and get involved so they can really tell you, hey, you guys need to stop. So I also noticed in the fight that, Anthony Joshua kept trying to pull down the head, and he was successful plenty of times, pulling down Parker's head to land the uppercut, which is a veteran / dirty move. It's not, we see it plenty, not just for uppercuts, but overall. Sometimes you knock down the guard, or drag down the guard a little bit with your left hand and follow with the right hand. It happens. So is it dirty? Yeah, sure, but it's more of a veteran old school move. It just happens. So I was okay with him doing that, Anthony Joshua. However, when Joshua, because both of them would clinch from time to time, both of them were doing it, not just one of them, both of them. But when Joshua would clinch, and it was Parker trying to punch free and punch on the break a little bit, just kind of roughhousing him, then all of a sudden Anthony was all pissed. And there was even a moment where he shrugged his, how you fake like you're going to punch someone or come at him? He even did that in a half a second. And I kind of thought, like, dude, it's one thing, either whine about it or join him. And you were already joining him being rough anyway. In fact, you were leading the cause. So to me, it's like you can't have it both ways, Joshua. You already got the crowd appreciation. You already got the event. You already got the biggest A side in world boxing. Can you let a guy be cheap to you if you're being cheap to him? It was kind of funny how frustrated he was getting. It was like, oh, really, Anthony? Well, that's funny because you keep pulling his head down and trying to land an uppercut. So either you're going to full on be clean and not even and be like, nah, dude, I don't do that. Or you can't have it both. You can't be dirty and then let the guy and get pissed when he's hitting you a couple extra times to the body in a clinch when the ref is still kind of vague anyway. So like I said, picking it back up 4-2. Then I thought Joshua went on a run, and there wasn't a ton of rounds I could give Parker at that point. The 8th round was really close. Some left hooks, some crafty, busy work, some jabs from Parker. But it kind of felt like the left hook and the better shots in that 8th round were from Joshua. That could have been a 10-10 round. And I even wrote a note later in the fight, this ref sucks. That's funny because it's so true. He did suck, no doubt about it. But especially the 8th and 9th round, I mean, Joshua just kept holding the head and uppercutting over and over again. Which, like I said, I'm okay with it, but don't complain when old boy starts to get rough with you as well. But really, the left hand and the left hook, the jab and the left hook, basically won this fight for him. Parker got cut later, I think in the 10th from an elbow. Joshua in maybe the 10th, 11th, 12th, the championship rounds, he would start the round with some pressure, and then he'd slow down. There'd be some, late exchanges and whatnot. But I just felt like it did kind of feel like after 6 or 8 rounds, it was a tight fight, and then Joshua just took it over. And you could kind of see him, putting a little bit more pressure on him. Not a lot, though, but just a little. For whatever reason, I didn't write down the CompuBox numbers. That's kind of weird. Oh, maybe they didn't show them because it wasn't their broadcast, and maybe they showed them a little later. I don't remember. But anyway, I had it about 9-3, maybe 8-4, maybe one of those. And I know this irritates people, but maybe 8-3-1. Back in the day, this may have been like a 7-3-2. You know what I mean? Seriously, because there was some draw rounds where you're like, neither guy did anything. I don't really want to give any guy, either guy, the benefit in this one. But overall, like I said, wasn't a horrible fight. Definitely wasn't horrible. I did think, Eddie Hearn, and he's a promoter, so he's going to talk his guy up, of course. Why wouldn't he, right? He was saying how it was a master class and all that, and I strongly disagree with that. I don't think it was a master class because you're able to do what you want to do. in a master class, and I don't think he was, because he wasn't able to land the right hand. Now, he was able to win clearly on the, on the cards, so that's really positive. But overall, I just thought it was a real mediocre, mildish performance. I didn't think a ton of positive or negative, to be honest with you. I don't know. I didn't see a ton of negativity beyond what we've seen in the last couple of fights, as far as, I guess, seeing limitations. When a guy moves on Joshua, he really doesn't cut the ring off that well. If the guy has some movement, like real movement, you know what I mean? Not just run of the mill, but nice amount of movement, a good jab, just craftiness. That's something that I thought was pretty evident. And like I said, he threw the right hand at times. Sure, it landed, but not much and not fully. It was kind of like that uppercut where Parker just would do enough to detonate it a little bit, or just, blatantly miss. And there was a lot of missing on both sides. I think that's a fair assessment. But overall, just all right. Just an okay fight. I'm not going to call it a skill fest, but I'm not going to call it a shit fest either. You know what I mean? Does it make me think, well, man, if Wilder's just his patient self and he sits on the outside, and especially if he's pumping that jab, and because obviously Parker was able to pump his jab, now there was a huge reach advantage there for Joshua that won't exist. It won't exist in the fight, obviously, against Wilder. So if he can subtly move the way he did against Stavern, and he showed flashes of, in other fights, that really bodes well for him. Am I ready to just be like, well, you know what? I changed my full mind. No, I'm not. I'm not saying that either. I think that I think you don't want to make a mistake of going too far down that line, as far as changing your mind too many times where you're like, all right, dude, but I mean, do you have like a thought, that's your own? Like, you can't get swayed too much. And that's part of the fun of doing this prediction stuff, I'm going to get to the Wilder stuff. I'm going to get to the news real quick. Just from that main event from ESPN2, the Golden Boy Promotions, I actually just randomly started recording this because I forgot it was on ESPN2. Even though I mentioned it last week, I totally forgot. And so I only got the main event. Luckily, I just started recording it, and I just got the main event. Pretty one-sided from Mark DeLuca. Speaking of refs, this ref kind of sucked too. First couple of rounds, you had an uppercut that kind of looked like a slip from DeLuca. He scored a knockdown. Some decent stuff. You could start to see by the third and fourth round that the fight was heating up some. Third round, his opponent, I think it's Argenton, he got cut on an accidental headbutt. There was a lot of those, actually, headbutts. It was really weird, though. So about 30 seconds in the fourth round, DeLuca goes low, right? And he's warned. But then Egerton retaliated with a low blow, and he got deducted points. And not just a point. He got deducted 2 points for that. And it's like, I understand him getting the deduction because, after all, the ref did warn the guy. He warned DeLuca, like, hey, don't do that. So he was on top of it, and then you blatantly, it's one thing to do it on, during the break or a part where maybe the ref has your back to you or on the side of you so he can't see it as much, on the inside and on the clinch or something. That's different, but he just blatantly went low right back at him. So I don't think it should have been 2 points, but I do think I understand the point deduction because the ref did his job first time. Like, hey, don't do that. And then you did it. Now, he didn't warn you, but I don't mind that because it was retaliation. It'd be different if he wasn't getting warned, and then you got to take matters into your own hand. But that wasn't the case here. Clearly, DeLuca was getting some hometown cooking. Both were going to the body in the fight. DeLuca just started kind of taking over the fight, starting to wear him down, leaning on him when he had him on the ropes was Mark DeLuca. Even through 5 rounds, he was up 73-51 as far as punch landed. Egerton outthrew him, but wasn't really landing too much solid. I guess on Egerton's cut, the local commission actually confiscated a bottle because they were using something in that bottle. Excuse me, had to get a sip of water there to clean a cut or to help the cut. So that was kind of weird. There was another late hit. Actually, I believe DeLuca got a it wasn't low. It was a late hit. Point deduction on that. But 7th round, right hand to the body, kind of a grazing left. He may have started with the left. Nice right hand, basically right in the middle of his stomach, kind of right in his chest. And then a grazing left knocked him down. Now, Egerton got up, but the ref just looked at him and was like, "Nah, I'm good. You're off." So it was kind of weird. It didn't need to be stopped. That main event was just kind of weird that way. By the way, Povetkin scored a knockout of all things against David Price. I forgot to mention that. Of all things, he got a knockout. I can't believe it. No way. Not a knockout against David Price. So yeah, that went as about how we could expect it. Although, Price had his moments, but then again, Price tends to have some moments in fights and then just gets knocked out. So I would love to see him just be done. I know it's easy for me to say, but damn, dude. Like how much are we, you know what I mean? Like, come on. Like, how much more? How much more do you need to take? And it's one thing to take, to keep losing. That's one thing. But he's at times he's taking beatings, right? But he's also getting knocked out. So I don't know, man. I really hope David Price just hangs it up. I mean, come on. Like, it's done. It's a wrap. Like I said, easy for me to say, but I don't know. I mean, he literally was just talking about how much, he broke his nose, and he had all these stitches, and he got a concussion, obviously, so I hope David Price hangs him up. Now, as an afternoon show, I thought it was kind of funny, and it's, I think it's kind of funny how people here, especially like either U.S. boxing fanboys or, of course, maybe a Wilder fanboy. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of UK fans that are like that, fanboys, or Anthony Joshua fanboys that say stuff like that doesn't make any sense. World boxing level, yeah, we know AJ's the guy. But we also know Wilder's obviously more, popular here. But when you look at the numbers for the fight, the afternoon, first and foremost, the afternoon, for the most part, unless you have like a lead-in in the afternoon, like the Spence fight, a couple years back, or, they did do some of those afternoon fights on NBC and CBS where maybe they have a golf tournament before it or something where you'd have a lead-in, and then you're not going to be as bad. Plus, that was on NBC and CBS and stuff like that. So much more accessible channels that are just there that have sports on during the day. So there's a better chance of you tuning into that than it is Showtime, if you catch my drift. But a lot of people used Anthony Joshua's afternoon numbers to make their point about, some were even say it shouldn't even be an A-side now. It should be a 50-50. It's Joshua's not even the A-side, which is obviously ridiculous. We all know Wilder's more popular here. He's probably I mean, if you look at the gates and all that, he's probably top 5 most popular fighter here. And he is growing. His base has been growing. And there's just no doubt about it. So the numbers, as far as the live, were average 346, peaked at 379, which is actually up from his last fight from the fall. And remember, it was like 579 average for that Vladimir fight, which was an epic war. So I think it's like second best afternoon showing. And then the replay actually did pretty well, 430 and peaked at 483. And there was actually just last weekend Dillian White, who's not as big as name, obviously. But over here, it's not like Josh was that big of a name. But on HBO, which has double the subscribers, that's at 387 and peaked at 444. And at night, did 427 and peaked at 490. So the night broadcast is very close, and it's not that far off. So if you're going to, talk about Anthony Joshua as far as him as a fighter or, to become a huge star here, he's going to have to fight here. And we all know pay-per-view revenue is bigger here because you charge 70 rather than 20, dollars. So, and just by fighting, in Vegas, they're going to give you a bunch of money just to do it. And then you can also, clearly make just as much at the gate. Now, I'm not saying like a run-of-the-mill fight or like a fight that maybe people don't know. I'm not saying that. Like if he fights Big Baby in August at the Barclays, they'll sell it out and they'll make a nice gate. But of course, it's not going to be 10 million or 12 million or something like that. Something where I do believe it would be much bigger with Wilder in there in Vegas. You know what I mean? So, yeah, clearly he needs to get more popular here. And if we're making money off this fight, and we have investment in this fight rather than just emotional, but I'm talking about money, like Showtime does and Eddie Hearn and everybody, right? Sky Sports. Obviously, having Wilder fight in the summer and having Joshua come here at the Barclays and fight Big Baby Miller or whoever would, in the end, especially if they use CBS on one of them or both, that'd be great. That would be the way to do it and then do the fight in December, and it would be a bigger deal. And then, yeah, that would be true. It would have a better chance to do better numbers on pay-per-view. But for the people that were like looking at the ratings and being like, oh, look at these numbers, and then you're comparing them, to Wilder's last couple of fights, it's just a joke. It's a joke. If you don't know, that's cool, but I'll tell you what, the boxing ratings in the afternoon, for the most part, on average, we're talking about, clearly nowhere near what they'd be in prime time. And doesn't it prove it? I mean, we prove it now when you look at the replay got a good chunk better, than the live show. And that just kind of proves the whole point. So yeah, that a lot of people, I just wanted to say that just in general. I didn't want to forget that. So I don't know, man. Anyway, as far as what we all want to see now, Wilder, obviously, and Joshua, will it be that, they both fight in the summer, they come back and fight in December? Never know. I feel like that's going to happen. Obviously, Anthony Joshua said something about Wilder on the mic after, post-fight, right? He did say, come here. Let's come here. And Wilder has since come out and said, cool, man. Cool. I'll take the 60-40. That's fine. And I'll come to the UK this summer. No problem at all. And like I said, he was going to have he was going to have a where'd it go? Sorry. He was going to actually, he's ready. He was going to have a news conference to explain all this But like I said, it got canceled yesterday because of the Canelo situation, which we will be getting to next. Then we're going to jump into CT, talk about the fight, the fights coming up this weekend. By the way, number to dial here, 646-381-4990. If this is your first time listening to the Rope It Up Radio podcast, it streams live on blogtalkradio.com/Rope It Up Radio. It streams live in archives there. It's basically like the headquarters. I usually try to stream it on YouTube as well at the Rope It Up Radio podcast YouTube channel. It's also available on Apple Podcasts, aka iTunes. If you're rating the review the show there, that'd be great. Another great outlet is Player FM. We get a lot of listens from there. Spreaker, Stitcher, you name it, we're there. Where you like to listen to your podcast, the Rope It Up Radio podcast is there. We also have a basketball and football show right now. We're going to move into the NBA playoffs all the way till July. We're also on the gruelingtruth.net. Go ahead and give a visit to the gruelingtruth.net. We're part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network, which is available at all the places that I mentioned. They have a good, really good app there at Spreaker. They're also available on iHeartRadio. So if you're an iHeartRadio fan, go ahead and give a listen. That's gruelingtruth.net. They got a great sponsor over there, mybookie.ag. That's mybookie.ag. You can get a little discount if you go ahead and go to the gruelingtruth.net, hit the mybookie.ag, and it'll send you over there to get you betting on some stuff if you're into it. Had to follow on at Rope It Up Radio on Twitter. Got a Facebook page that I use a little bit, but I'm on Facebook as well. Anyway, let's get to some quotes. Now, we're going to go from the Daily Star. This is actually offboxingscene.com, but it's posted as Chris McKinnon, courtesy of the Daily Star. Eddie Hearn, this was Eddie Hearn was saying right away. Well, they don't really want the fight, and they're going to fight Brazil. They're fighting Brazil because Brazil had pulled out of the called eliminator from the IBF side, I believe, with the Kubrak Pulev. And we'll get into a little bit of news for who they've called now for that. But a lot of people, or not a lot of people, Eddie Hearn said this. And also after the fight, he said, they really don't. The problem is he's got too many people behind him. He basically is saying, Lou DiBella is nothing. Shelly Finkel wants the fight, but he doesn't like the style of negotiations. And he's also talking about JD's, his trainer. So he says, it's difficult because Wilder has three managers. And, of course, Al Heyman. They don't really like each other, and each other will feel they don't need each other. Al says, why do I have to deal with Shirley? Shirley says, I have a lot of experience. Why do I need to deal with Al? And Dees has, been there with Deontay from the beginning and says we don't need these guys. So he said, I'm speaking to Al Heyman's people. I've got a good relationship with them, and I could do business with them. He leads the Errol Spence Brazil Martin fights over time. So this is what he said. This is what he was saying a couple of days ago, that we're going to try to work it out, but it's clear to them that Dominic Brazil will be next because they pulled out, and that would have been a big opportunity with some money behind it potentially, which I don't know for a fact. I really don't know how much money would have been in that fight. But they're saying, the bigger opportunity, obviously, with Wilder here, because Showtime would probably get behind it or whatever. Of course, Eddie Hearn said that they wouldn't get behind it about a week ago. So, anyway. So you're kind of like in limbo. You hear Wilder clearly saying, cool, man. And also, like I mentioned, they have actually been talking lately. So before he said they're not answering my calls, they're not doing anything. And what he meant by that was he gave them an in white and they haven't responded, which I believe to be true. I believe that to be true, but it's a little different than what we're talking about with the Wilder stuff. So anyway, this is somewhat fresh off of Dan Raphael's news desk, right? This was posted this afternoon. This is what he said. Matchroom boxing promoter Eddie Hearn has said that he's going to meet with Anthony Joshua on Thursday to figure out the rest of the year. We're going to, put an offer together this week and look to continue the continue. This is out of Hearn's mouth. To continue the conversation with Wilder's team, meaning there was talks going on. And that's probably why maybe 60-40 is where they're at right now in the talks. Maybe, I don't know, but that's where he probably said, I'm just putting 2 and 2 together. It could be totally wrong, but, this is where maybe that's 60-40 while they're saying, hey, I'll take the 60-40. I'll come to you. Let's go. That's fine, because as I mentioned, it did sound like Anthony Joshua was saying, hey, let's have the fight here. So here's the thing. He said, we'll be talking about whether Joshua fights again in July or August, or we go straight into a Wilder fight in October or November. Hearn said he spoke with Showtime Sports president Steven Espinoza on Tuesday night to see what would work for Showtime. And they said, he said, basically the Joshua Wilder fight works best for him in September, especially if it's in Vegas. That would be a big weekend. They can go ahead and book that thing early when Canelo's still trying to figure out what he's going to do, or December, which does make sense at the end of the college football season, kind of sneak in there early December. Sometimes we've had some pay-per-view events in that time. But he also mentioned, and this is something I like about it, Hearn said if Joshua and Wilder each fight a summer fight, he would want to go in both of those bouts with a contract already signed. I said we either fight in July or August, and then we see what happens, but I want the deal now. If we both fight in the summer, cool. But I'm looking to reach an agreement prior to the next fight. Because of the fans demanded, it's important to actually know if they're fighting one more fight or not, yada, yada, yada. He said Hearn will arrive in the United States April 22nd and will be available for any face-to-face meetings needed to finalize Joshua and Wilder. So they've been talking for a little while now. If he's talking about at the end of the month they could potentially finalize something, that would be a pretty big deal. What I'm saying is that I want to make Joshua Wilder fight in 2018. The question is what we've been going over. So that's it. And I would be 100% okay with that. 100% okay. I would be 300% okay with that situation if they sign the actual contract. And I don't think it'll be Dillian White. I doubt it, but this would actually play into what Wilder said. Hey, I'll fight. I'll fight him. Dillian White. I'll go over there and fight him on pay-per-view, but only if I have a signed contract for the Joshua fight, which you can't really blame him. Of course you'd want that. That's pretty basic stuff we're talking about there. So anyway, on the surface, it looks good. Obviously, a lot of this pressure that fans and media have been putting on is starting to register. Clearly, they've been in talks. They know parameters. And I think we should get somewhat of a resolution in the near future. I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, this thing's going to be done next week, but I really hope within the next month or two we get a pretty damn good idea. And just hearing what Hearn said, I'll be there April 22nd for his card. Obviously, Big Baby's fighting Duhaupas, right? He's got to get through him to even get a shot at Anthony Joshua, which would be right now. What was the Barclays? They had the Barclays say for Anthony Joshua August 25th, I believe it was. So that was that same last weekend of August that McGregor and Mayweather fought on. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. We'll keep you posted, no doubt. It feels good, though. It feels good, the fact that they're talking. and whatnot, and maybe we'll get a little bit more clarification, even a little bit more detail on an IFL Coogan Coogan interview, and maybe he'll have that press conference, Deontay Wilder, here soon, or that press teleconference or whatever, so he can explain a little bit more as well. But we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to talk Canelo, then I'm going to get to CT. So Canelo pulled out. Pause. He decided to withdraw from the fight. I'll say this. Now, as far as Golovkin, it sounds like they're going to move to the MGM Grand for his fight, May 5th still. And I get it. You're a month away from the fight. I totally understand him wanting to still fight. I mean, he fought in September. He doesn't want to, push something back another 90 days or whatever. So he didn't have anything to do with this thing being canceled. So I think he should fight. And if you're realistic, he's not going to choose a hard opponent. Do we want a Deverchenko or an Andrade? Yeah. Oh, yeah, we do. They're right there. Take them. But it's not going to happen. It sounds like Spike O'Sullivan is going to be the guy. That same O'Sullivan who was potentially going to be the fight with Canelo in September, no matter what happens. It's like either a comeback fight or a stay busy fight. That was a rumor last week or the week before. And I don't, I'm not crazy about Sullivan and Golovkin. Don't get me wrong. But I get it. However, if they leave it on HBO pay-per-view, then that's just bullshit and nonsense. However, saying that, we will get a gauge of Golovkin's pay-per-view numbers. Post-September fight at 1.3 or whatever with, what he did with Canelo. So if he's able to do decent numbers with Sullivan, that kind of tells you. And there will be some attention on this fight because there has been now about him just in general. And when that weekend rolls around, some people will still be like, hey, I didn't know Golovkin was still fighting. Yeah, you never know. But either way, I don't want it on HBO pay-per-view. I think that's a big problem there. Now, maybe they already have something planned and the scheduling's all mixed up. I don't know. Obviously, they're going to televise it, but maybe something's stopping Peter Nelson from a scheduling standpoint from scheduling it live on HBO. But you doubt they'd have some kind of big premiere of a movie or some kind of special that night anyway, because they were going to have a pay-per-view anyway. So I don't know. But as far as Canelo withdrawing, I think it's a great thing for him to do. It sucks. I want to see the fight. I liked the first fight. Was really intrigued in the second fight. But I think it's a must. I mean, just the fans alone having to wait till August 18th. And it seemed like you were waiting for the inevitable, where you're just like, all right, dude, this is happening. It's going to happen. You're going to get suspended. A lot of people think that he's going to get suspended for a year, and then he'll, appeal, and then he'll get 6 months, and maybe it'll be like time spent, and they'll date back to under investigation, and they'll kind of date it back to where either it became public about the failed 2 test or the actual failed 2 test or, the temporary suspension. Whatever it is, there is a chance that Canelo still fights in September. There's a chance that Golovkin and him fight September, right, for the rematch. So all is not lost. It just is for Cinco de Mayo. Unless you're a Golovkin fan or a Golovkin fanboy, whichever. Then you're happy he's still fighting, right? And like I said, I get it. But, they had that press conference. And CT, I'm about to go to you right now. They had a press conference. And basically Canelo did the right thing, but he didn't admit any guilt. He said that, he gave them as much evidence as they asked as far as where he purchased the meat and the receipts and that type of thing. And they're on board for this hearing coming up April 18th. But they just thought, you know what? Not only that, but just the mental state of their fighter in his biggest fight right now. So I get it. And as a fan base, you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And sure, you have plenty of time to cancel your hotel, but sometimes you book a combo deal where you get a flight in a hotel deal. Then that kind of screws that up. Now, some fight fans, especially the ones that have been traveling for the last couple of years or years and years, they know to get that insurance, that flight insurance. So you can reschedule this stuff. Sometimes it's more expensive, other times it's cheaper. It works out that way. Matters the season, of course, but it can it can mess up your packages for vacation, and so it just sucks. And it would suck to have to wait that damn long. And when you hear that, you go, man, that is a long time. That's a long hearing. So I think Canelo did the right thing. And of course, their side of it made it clear that they don't think they were cheating, and the integrity's there, but we just felt like this is the right thing to do. So, and I did think it's the right thing to do, as much as I was looking forward to the fight. This is actually, a lot of people are like, oh, here's boxing's black eye, but honestly, compared to a lot of other sports outside of the Olympics, they don't have stringent testing either. So a lot of major sports, even MLB, who does blood and urine test you, but it's random, but it's really barely happening throughout the year. Even the UK fighters, shouts out to the UK, they get randomly tested, but it's not like you're going to get randomly tested a couple times a month even. It's throughout the year, and it is cool that they do it, but it's still not any kind of stringent thing. So I don't really look at it as that big of a black eye. I actually look at it as a step in the right direction to the Nevada State Athletic Commission, that they're actually willing to put a little teeth. Maybe they're still on their baby teeth. I don't think it's a whole lot of teeth, because they know that they can just make it look good that they suspend him for a year. He came back and appealed it. They suspended for 6 months, and then he gets to fight later. Who knows? So I wouldn't be shocked at that, though. We are going to talk that Showtime triple header coming up. If you are on the YouTube live stream, I'm going to go ahead and shut that down here in a couple seconds. You can call 646-381-4990. That'll allow you to listen to the rest of the show, not just the live stream that, by the way, has 50 minutes left. I almost said 50 seconds. 50 minutes of the live stream. Go ahead and call 646-381-4990. Maybe you're going grocery shopping, going to get a workout, walking the dogs, stuck in traffic on the West Coast overnight, just starting your night. Working or on the road or whatever you're at. 646-381-4990 is the number to call. You can also hit that link there in the description box for those checking out the YouTube stream right now. So I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. And like I mentioned, this will have you can go to it live right now and listen to the last 50 minutes. But if you're listening to this later tonight or tomorrow, the next day or Saturday, it has the full archived episode you can listen to front to back. So I appreciate there for the people that are listening on YouTube. I'm going to shut that down, go to some callers here.